Praised be Jesus and Mary. We celebrate today a group of 25 martyr saints canonized on the 21st of May of the year 2000 by St. John Paul II. All of them martyrs for Christ in Mexico during the Cristeros uprising against the godless government of Mexico between the years of 1916 and 1937. Members of that resistance, both spiritual and also armed, insofar as it was necessary to defend innocent lives from unjust aggression on the part of the government. Father Correa Magallanes is the one whose name is most associated with this group because it appears in the liturgical books. But as I mentioned, there was 25 of them in total, priests and laymen alike, who in different ways opposed and sought to reform and overturn the atheistic constitution of the government of Mexico of that time, and to guarantee a freedom for Catholicism and Catholics in that country, who instead were being not only persecuted but martyred, put to death in cruel ways. I'd like to look at one of these 25 today, and not Father Cristeros Magallanes, who's perhaps well known because, again, he's the one whose name we hear most often, but another Magallanes. It's a little odd, but there's another priest martyr of that group whose last name was also Magallanes, Father Mateo Correa Magallanes. And he is a very interesting martyr as well. He was born in 1866. He was ordained in 1893. He was a member, actually, of the Knights of Columbus, who by then had already spread into Mexico. He was a zealous priest, and he was actually connected with another one of the martyrs of that time. He gave First Communion to Blessed Miguel Pro, who was a member of one of the parishes where Father Mateo served as a young priest. Blessed Miguel Pro would later himself be a martyr for Christ in 1927. Father Mateo served in many parishes and served the diocese of his origin in many ways. In 1923, he became vice rector of the seminary of Zacatecas, where he himself had studied and been ordained. And in 1926, finally, summarizing his life, he was arrested, and his martyrdom began. The usual accusations of his plotting against the government and so on were hurled against him, and then the specific form of his martyrdom took shape. The general of the federal government, General Ortiz, had other prisoners in that same jail, some soldiers who had been captured, and he made Father Mateo, or rather he allowed Father Mateo to hear their confessions. So the prisoners were wanting to go to confession. Father Mateo was willing to hear their confessions, and the general allowed that to happen. However, the general had a sinister end in mind. Once the confessions had been heard, he tried to force Father Mateo to then reveal what he had heard in confession. Now, as we all know, what a priest hears in confession is protected by a so-called seal of the confessional. It's sealed, and the priest may never, ever, for any reason, without any exception, speak about it to anyone, not even to the penitent himself, without his permission. So Father Mateo staunchly refused, even under threat of death. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this persecution was very serious, and these death threats were not just empty threats. Father Mateo, the next day, was actually executed for refusing to violate the seal of the confessional, for refusing to manifest what he had heard from these soldiers, and he became a martyr on February the 6th of 1926. So just as a little spiritual takeaway, I think it's an eloquent example, this of Father Mateo Correa Magallanes, of the true presence of Christ in the sacrament of confession. a true presence of Christ in the priest, who has, as a representative of Christ, a great responsibility, but also then a great grace to fulfill that responsibility. And there have been many martyrs of the seal of the confessional in the course of history. And this eloquent example also gives us confidence that Christ, yes, is present in his sacraments, gives us grace to approach the sacrament when necessary, to approach it with faith, but also to those who administer it, gives them the grace to administer them well. It's a consoling thought today, and when threats to the integrity of the seal of the confessional arise here and there, and governments try to repeat those errors of past governments and try to violate the sanctity of the sacrament of confession. It gives us confidence that perhaps these attempts will be defeated and overturned, but even if they're not, it gives us the confidence to know that Christ will be present in the sacrament nonetheless, and he'll furnish the ministers of the sacrament with all the graces necessary to administer them well, even under great duress, even under great persecution, so that Christ may always be present to his people, even until the end of time. Praised be Jesus and Mary.